Welcome to Buckets, coming to you from the Tommy John Home Studios. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Jim Turvey from Roto Grinders, at Turvey Bets on Twitter and in the Action Network app. As we perused the prices for the NBA Finals, and as all of us started to talk about what we thought was going to happen, a recurring theme started to develop, which was, well, the Thunder are probably going to kick their heads in. And we talked about that on our series preview. We broke it down in detail. We gave all sorts of stuff about that in our series preview with Brandon Anderson. You can hear more about some of those angles on the props episode, and you'll hear even more of those about those in our bet extravaganza and bets for game one, which you can catch on Wednesday and Thursday afternoon before game one, Thursday morning before game one. However, a lone voice in the wilderness called out. A brave soul demanded audience to make the case for the Indiana Pacers to win the NBA title, or at least be better than what the market thinks their chances should be, which is how we do this. And that man's name is Jim Turvey. And so, Jim Turvey is here to give you the case for the Indiana Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, so let me start by, because I don't want to go too long on this. We agreed that this should be short. This shouldn't be another secondary preview. Keep it tight. But I do want to make sure that I think listening to this naturally, there'll be kind of a pushback to this of, and I want you to know I'm aware. I want to make sure that this isn't a bit. It isn't like, hey, we need one person on the Pacers. It isn't a double down on my OKC skepticism. I want to make sure that it is genuinely. I see you reacting already. Trust me. This is a 5-paragraph essay, Matt. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to come together. I'm layering this all together. This is just the intro here. And I also want to make sure that I didn't go into it with a mindset of hedging some of the OKC Thunder futures. I wanted to make sure it was none of that. I wanted to make sure that I could genuinely make a case for Indiana at plus 500 to win this series. And I really do think that there is a case there, but I do want to start with the worries, because any good case, you're going to have to steal man. You have to go up against basically the preview that you and Brandon did, because if anyone listened to that preview, awesome preview as always, and really did lay out why. I mean, this Thunder team is absolutely terrifying. So there's a reason that these are long odds against Indiana, and there's a reason a lot of very, very smart people who I usually am deferring to and listening to are going on the OKC side of it. I think the most telling is the two teams in history have won series finals at longer than plus 200. It just, when you get to this level of NBA basketball, it very rarely is a surprise. It's very rarely a long shot. Along those lines, we've got the trend of recently one skilled team making the finals and one team being exposed as soon as they get to the finals. This is the new common trend, because we're getting more of these kind of longer shot teams making the finals, but we really aren't seeing them winning it yet. We really have not seen that crazy long shot get it done. I think those are very, very good cases for OKC. OKC also matches up in a lot of ways very well with Indiana. They're kind of like a better Indiana. Indiana cannot take advantage of a potential weakness on the glass for OKC. There's also the regular season matchups, pretty damning. Only 2 of them, but OKC absolutely worked Indiana. They won without Chet. They won by 20. These were not close games. Game ones have been key to Indiana throughout the postseason. It's like the ultimate spot for bettors. Home game ones of the NBA Finals. So now this is getting even more narrow if it has to be after a game one, winning 4 of 5. Like it gets narrow and narrow and narrow. However, I do think that there is some stuff here. So do you want to push back on any of that? Those are all your thoughts. I assume no pushback there. Do you want to layer on any extra before I get to why I am on the Indiana side of this?
No, except to say that I think there are competing inside me. There are 2 wolves, and the first wolf is bold and brash, and like anything can happen. Pacers are dangerous, and the other wolf is very kind of timid and wears glasses and is like, well, actually, there's actually a very good chance that the series ends in 5 games. And so when I was talking to Brandon on the podcast, as I want to do, I've kept wanting to be like, well, yeah, but like to push back. And I'm trying to fight that instinct
Yes.
And so I think it's interesting for you to be able to break through that barrier and push through here, because I do think that there's a certain amount of better fear that I think OKC has put into us with this market. Because if you're just like, does this market, forget about what number you have, but like, does this market feel like it's too aggressive on OKC? And I'm like, yes, it feels like it's too aggressive on OKC. I just don't know if it's actually too aggressive on OKC.
And
So
that's exactly where I am, because I messaged you, I think it was 3 days ago now, and I said, because I'd been setting this up for a while. I've been high on Indiana all year, and I've been skeptical of OKC all year, and that's why I wanted to make sure that when we actually got to it, I actually did the research and made sure I wasn't just like, hey, I've had a thought for 6 months. Let me, now run this thought out without any prep. I messaged you like 3 days ago saying, guys, the gods are telling me not to bet on the Pacers, and you said, Jim, that's not the gods, that's logic. And that was very well put. And then I kept digging. I promise it wasn't a kept digging to see if I could find something at some point, because I do think that there is a lot here. I think at the core of it really does come down to a little bit of doubt of OKC and a belief in Indiana. But the biggest thing is always the market. And again, I've had friends text me in the big, so who are you picking in the series? I'm like, well, the Pacers at plus 500, which to a non-betting person is like probably the most annoying sentence you can possibly hear. Like, yeah, but who are you picking? So obviously, if this were a pick'em series, I'm going with OKC. That's very clear. Even if they were minus 200, minus 300, I would be on that side. They are the better team. They have home court. They've been unbelievable at this home court. However, I think that this net rating thing is we are seeing the net rating of these last couple years inflate market beliefs in teams. And so I came up with a little term here. We're coined this term here. You've heard of free throw merchant, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Brunson. This is a net rating merchant. This is the last year's Celtics, this year's Thunder, and to a much smaller degree, last year's Thunder as well. Really good teams that have historic net ratings. But the problem is, once these get more and more common, they become less and less historic. And, Brandon has talked, I think you have talked about what is inflating these net ratings to a degree. We have an era where more and more players are sitting commonly. You're playing against not full teams. You have 3-point variance leading to crazy blowouts and teams being okay with those blowouts and moving along to the next game. We have tanking. Tanking's always existed, but it definitely, we have some teams at the bottom of the league right now who are worse than, outside of those Bobcat years, teams that we have seen. And I think it is semi-blinding us to how these teams are. Think about last year, Matt. You still will always caveat that Boston Celtics title a little bit. You and I both say that is a title. There's no asterisk, no anything. Everyone who gets a title deserves it. However, they got a very easy path, and I think you and I were skeptical of Boston as this truly historic team, and that net rating transferring into the postseason. And that's where this comes around, is that to be a net rating merchant, you have to have a lack of rep in close games, and that shows a little bit. And OKC, the stat with them that I always go to, 1-4 in the regular season in one possession or overtime games. Now, the very natural caveat to that is they're 2-2 in the postseason. Indiana's 3-0 in the postseason, 9-3 in the regular season. I care about the total number of games there almost as much as the record itself. However, there are definitely questions. Now, I think the immediate and obvious counter to that is Game 4 in the Minneapolis series. I don't know why I call them Minneapolis. Throw back to the Lakers there. The Minnesota series, that Game 4 was truly everything I have looked for from OKC. It was a road game. The shooters hit their shots. OKC closed out a very close win. Really genuinely impressive, especially there was J-Dub and Chet, who are two of the guys who I sometimes do have questions about their shooting in these big moments. Here's the thing, though. I think the path for Indiana looks a lot more like the Denver series than the Minnesota series. Minnesota was a bad clutch team all season. Anthony Edwards was like historically bad in the clutch. I kept wanting to bet him for clutch player of the year because he had the field goal attempts, but he couldn't make a bucket to save his life in the clutch, and his plus minus was terrible. Minnesota was not a good clutch team. Denver was, and they got to a Game 7 against this team, and a Game 7 where I think OKC wins that no matter what. But it was a Game 7 where Aaron Gordon had a grade 2 hammy strain. Michael Porter Jr. couldn't lift his arm above his shoulder. And Jokic kind of saw the writing at the wall at halftime and was like, all right, we're out of this. So I've laid out the first part of this pro Indiana net rating merchant propaganda that I'm doing. Does any of that win you over in any degree?
No. This is, I think, you need to make the case for the Pacers and not against the Thunder. So one thing I will say here is I have tried to play both sides of the fence with the Celtics, as I am want to do from time to time, as I like to piss off both sides equally. And so anyone that's like, yeah, that Celtics team would have lost, I'm like, no, they had the fifth best SRS SRS of all time, and all four teams above them won the NBA title. The Thunder have the best.
Hold on, pause on that. Do you genuinely believe that SRS is equal to the previous SRSs from other eras? If you do, then that's fine.
I get what you're saying, because this is an argument, and the Celtics fans hated this. That I was like, does it feel like the Celtics are as good as the 2017 Warriors? Does it feel like that?
And it's a different era, and that's one thing I want to make sure I am adjusting for, is that flawed teams can be that good in comparison to the rest of the league, but I don't think it translates 1-to-1 to the postseason.
I get it. Except that we do have a pretty substantial history. Like, if you can track me down the team in the modern, this is the problem. If you can track me down the team in the modern era with that kind of SRS that failed, we'd have like a pattern here, right? Of like, net rating is no longer as good. Like, we've got to do a more advanced version of our strength of schedule in order to get a better determination of this, right? Because SRS is point differential versus strength of schedule. And to me, that's a very simple and good measure. Like, it's going to be hard for me to get off of that measure, because it's like, it's literally just like, hey, how much did you beat the teams and how good were the teams that you beat? That's a pretty simple and good way to measure overall team strength across an 82-game season.
I know you want me to focus on the Indiana side, but I'm going to hang up on OKC for 1 second in comparison to last year's Boston. If we had gotten Minnesota versus Boston last year, you and I both, we loved the matchup for Boston when it got to Dallas. So we were on the Boston side for finals. If it had been Minnesota instead, it probably would have been a number around here. I'm not as good at making markets. I think I'm better at reading them, hopefully, theoretically. Would you have been on the Minnesota side? Like, are you entirely against a team that with this good of an SRS, or is it in this instance that you are not? This isn't the time to pull the plug.
No, I think it's a matter of, I would have been on the Wolves side from probably a games perspective, right? Yeah. I would have been compelled to be like, I'm gonna take the Wolves here, because if I disagree this much, then I need to be on the Wolves. I need to be on the wild outcome of them winning. But I would have preferred like +2.5, +1.5 in those kind of matchups.
And I will say, as someone who does believe that, the spreads of a spread and a money line aren't necessarily perfectly correlated. There are times that, a team can hang around and cover better than they are likely to win the game. Like, those aren't necessarily at the same part in the distribution, chart, if you will. And I'm reading it, that's kind of how you see these series as well, where these lower teams can hang around, but you don't think that if you see an edge on them in terms of number of games, like a series spread, you don't see that same edge on betting them in the series as a whole.
Right. It's about game script, is in terms of, one of this is that they're going to build this off of what's the probability based off of the power rating that team A beats team B home, away, across those series. What's the percentage chances of those? And the outcomes are derived off of that, influenced by handle, obviously. And we talk about things like series flow. And like Brandon and I, even though like I'm on the -2.5, which I want the sweep included in my bet. I wanted that included, but I'm going to be on Pacers money line game 3. Like, no matter what happens game 1 and 2, I'm betting the Pacers in game 3, even though that's going to increase the chances of me losing my bet, and it works against the money I've already got in the market, because I know that number, I'm not going to agree with it based off of the flow of the series and the opportunity for a team at home in game 3 with this Pacers team, first finals in 25 years. That's a great spot to bet the Indiana Pacers, unless like the market is wildly different than what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I see that, and I think that's totally fair. I'm going to ask you one more question, and this is starting to move us towards the Indiana side of it. Coming into the postseason, who would you have liked more, like in a vacuum? I know this stuff doesn't work in a vacuum, but who would you have liked more in a vacuum, Indiana or Denver?
Indiana.
Yeah. So, and do you see now? Is it matchup stuff that you think led to that being a 7-game series? Do you think it's Jokic that like is a player that clearly is a tier or two above anyone on Indiana, or do you think that that is a viable path to look at as a team that can win close games? If there's OKC skepticism in close games, coaching advantage wasn't even necessarily a thing in that series. So, talk to me about what if me using that as a proxy is an issue for you.
This is the best part of your OKC prosecution that holds up strongest, because I differ from common consensus on this, and I'm okay with being with like if you take the common consensus, because the common consensus is, and OKC said this. OKC has said this. They're like, that team pushed us, and that was the adversity we had to get past, and we learned from it, and we were better from it. And you see teams go through that, and then they push through, and they're a different team on the other side. I have a little bit of a different perspective as somebody that covered the Nuggets night to night for 82 games. They're not good. Like, that team is not good. They are like all the stuff about, well, Denver slowed them down defensively. I'm like, did they? Or did they throw out a zone and get lucky with some outcomes? And the Pacers can throw out that zone. That's a thing in your favor here. I look at it and I go, look, I have watched the ending of game 1 7 times. I do not know how Denver won that game. I don't know how they did it. I have no idea.
You know how the Pacers won game 1 against the Knicks?
Yeah, the Knicks suck. So that when I'm like, okay, if they lose game 1 and the Thunder come back and are like, oof, that was close, can't let that happen again, smash them in game 2. This thing's done in 5, and the entire series flips. What I have said this on the podcast with Brandon, and it's important, I think, for you, is there. I do not see, maybe, like, look, again, anything can happen. This is sports. There is no Pacers 4, Pacers 5 outcome that is over a combined 1 percentage point.
We'll get to how I'm betting this. Those are not included.
Yeah, right. So it's got to be a longer series, and from that end, you have to bake in these situations where it's like, okay, well, yes, but then OKC will, right? And that to me is like an interesting question, because I did not think, for example, because if you go like, well, people thought after the Pacers took game 1, everyone liked the Knicks in game 2. I bet Pacers game 2 because I was like, no. Like, this number is still wrong. The Pace and this Knicks team is not good enough. The Thunder are good enough that even if the Pacers take game 1, the Thunder are going to come back. But if they do take game 1, you're live. So I will just say, like, the Nuggets series doesn't provide a basketball diagram.
No, can I pause you right there? Actually,
yeah,
I actually agree, because the teams aren't similar at all.
Right.
But here's the thing: Indiana is actually a tougher matchup for OKC.
Okay.
They don't turn the ball over at all. So Denver was in the bottom 10 in terms of allowing opponent fast break points. Like, they allowed in the top 10 most. I never know how to phrase that. Indiana is second in the league to OKC in terms of limiting that. They don't turn the ball over. They get back in the rare cases they do. Indiana also has a much better path to launching threes and increasing the variance in any one of these single games. OKC invites that variance sometimes at times. It hasn't really burned them in this postseason, but Indiana is like, this is the team that the market does not believe, because they have this voodoo shooting. I think the voodoo is Rick Carlisle and Tyrese Halliburton. Now, this is going to be, I kind of skimmed over the how tough of a matchup it is for Halliburton and Siakam, and I do think that is a genuine thing to be worried about, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the line for me here. But I think in terms of matchup, they are not going to give OKC the free points that a lot of teams have. They're going to make them work a lot harder. I don't think that they're going to be getting the Pascal Siakam layup with 20 seconds on the shot clock because they leaked out after a made basket. That's the thing you get against the Knicks. It's not against OKC. And again, they can't take advantage on the glass, and they don't have Jokic. But I do think they're at advantage. They have advantages that Denver didn't have, because they're a totally different team. Like you said, there's not really a comparison team building wise. But I really do think, and actually this is one I do think, if you were with me on this gap, you'd be more intrigued in potentially even in betting Indiana. I think that Rick Carlisle is A tier and potentially 2 tiers above Mark Dagnall. And I think you probably have it like they're close edge to Carlisle. Am I right in that assessment?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're going to do this, make me the case without tearing down Dags.
Well, I think the case is that Rick Carlisle has clearly shown throughout. I mean, the 2011 title, they did time and time again. He was able to outsmart really tough opponents. the last 2 years, he's gotten teams that I don't think many people would say this is the most talented team. We've seen it. The market hasn't believed it at all. They've outperformed in the playoffs time and time again. And as much as I think this isn't a good matchup for Halliburton, I do think that he is maybe the player in the league I would most want running a Rick Carlisle offense. He's just so good at creating that quick flow, action, reset, action, reset. Nothing is ever stalling out. I do think the case towards Indiana here, though, has to be on the defensive side. And that's where I do come back to OKC skepticism having to be pretty core to my argument, because I do think the OKC defense, I can't pick a single flaw in it. It is a perfect defense. It is such a good defense. It has perfect matchups for every team. It is a genuinely phenomenal defense. I can't pick apart anything there. I can pick apart with OKC that sometimes their shooters really don't do so hot in big moments. And again, that game 4 in Minnesota was amazing. And it answered a fair amount of questions for me, for sure. But it was a single data point in what is still, like, I don't want to overweight that either, because I think that that's kind of like what you said about, oh, this Denver series, that was the hardship we needed, and now we're through it. I tend to not think that way. I think more like that was a data point. Now we need another data point, and every data point proves it further and further. I very well could be wrong. Again, I wouldn't bet Indiana straight up in this series. I wouldn't even bet them at plus 300 in this series. But I do think once we get out to plus 500 with the ways that Indiana can match up with them, and some of the buttons that Carlisle can press, one thing I've noticed is the minutes. The minutes have not been super high all season for Siakam and Halliburton. That's important because, you know, people think of this Indiana team as a very deep team. They are a very deep team, but the starters are really where that net rating pops. So their starters net rating is the second best net rating in the postseason, plus 16.5. OKC's starters are only plus 4.7. That's a very big gap. Now, you said this, you pointed out on the preview, the next, their bench lineups are incredible. And I do think Indiana's bench, I've got a little section coming up, like swing points. Indiana's bench is going to be a very big swing point. If TJ McConnell is doing, like, getting overworked and oversteamed, and, he's got the red face and he turned it over 3 times and Caruso's eating him up, that's Indiana's not winning that game, at least. We'll put it that way. But I think that Carlisle can really lean on players. And I noticed that he's done this in games 1 and 2 of series, especially. He front loads their minutes, and they've gotten off to really quick starts in series. I wonder if they're trailing in a series or if they're tied and it's a big, swing game 5, let alone a game 7. I think they have stuff in the tank. Now, what I want to hear from you is, do you think if Halliburton goes up to 40 minutes, Siakam goes up to 40 minutes, does that take away part of what makes them so special because they run so fast? They have all the energy. I think OKC's going to kind of muck them up anyways. And in a way that might actually save some of their energy in a really weird, twisted way of, if they're not able to get out and run, they might actually be able to play more minutes. And that's the unit you want out there. Am I just like totally twisting myself in knots? Or is there some logic to being able to stay on the court more and potentially having your best players out there 40 minutes a game, and that unit that's plus 16.5 actually gets a few more minutes? Underdog is one of the best places to make picks during playoff basketball. While they score buckets, you could score cash. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play right now in your state. Their app has over 100,000 5-star reviews and millions of players. To play, all you have to do is download the app and choose whether a player will go higher or lower than one of their stats. Choose things like points, assists, so much more. Once your pick feels good, you can play with as little as $1. If you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Download the Underdog app and sign up with promo Buckets100 to unlock a special offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. That's promo code Buckets100. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
I think part of this is fans go too far with he sucks, get him out there, he can't play. Why is this guy playing? Why aren't they playing this guy more? Why isn't the star out there? Instead of thinking, one of the things I think that Rick's done an amazing job of, and one of the reasons that they've held these comebacks is that Tyrese comes back in and he's got another gear, and all of a sudden it's like shot, and then you're able to just burst past them.
Yeah.
So until it gets late, like by game 6, yeah, it's going to have to be like Tyrese is running out there 42 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you get to game 6, you probably are pretty close to either winning or being able to hedge effectively a bet. And so, like, that's the point is, and early in the series, I do think they have that kind of opportunity. I do want to say one thing here, because you mentioned like all the bench lineups. I need to this is important to me. The Pacers do have the best net rating in the playoffs for any team on the starters. Second best, I'm sorry, behind Minnesota.
Well, that was going to be a little twist that I had. They are the second best, and you know who is the best is Minnesota, who OKC just wiped off the floor. Yeah. So that is slightly damning.
They didn't. Just
no, that's true.
Finch got caught up being like, no, I got to play the small ball. Yeah. The key is not the bench lineups for OKC. It's because you say bench lineup and you think of like one starter and four.
Yeah.
If you go to 3-man lineups in the playoffs, minimum 50 minutes played, and that's a lot higher sample.
Yeah.
It's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 7th, 8th, 10th. Like, all of these combos work together. They're just not as good as a 5-man, which I think is interesting because it does allow you to, if Indiana gets off to another hot start, even if OKC hits them with a second quarter haymaker, you're still within range of a fourth quarter position here. So to that point, I think there's a game script for you.
Yeah, that is kind of central to the thing is if they can keep it close enough by taking leads early. And by the way, if you're betting these games live, keep an eye on this. See if this is a thing where Indiana is getting out to fast starts with the starters. As soon as we turn over a starter here or there, OKC starts to push. You can kind of game script this out. See if it's actually playing out. Maybe watch a game. There's a couple of swing points here. I said it at the start. I do think one of the net rating merchant maybe is the biggest thing for me. The second biggest is the Carlisle of it all. I really do think he is at a level right now that's in the, like, I think he has a decent case at the best coach in the league right now. And I think that is Dags. I actually am not dinging him as much. I've messaged you at times with big skepticism of him. I've come around a little bit. I think he is a solid, slightly above average NBA coach. And I think that Carlisle is like maybe the best coach in the league. Another pivot point, talked about the bench minutes, 3-point shooting, obviously. Mm-hmm. That we talked about the Indiana having this like voodoo that they can do. They are able to get these crazy varying streaks that the market doesn't believe in at all. And maybe, Cinderella's shoe doesn't fit come midnight. That's what they say, right? But this team, I do believe in the Carlisle. Let me say it again. Carlisle and Halliburton, those two getting shots that are going to allow shooting at levels that don't seem like they should be. They seem like they're due for regression. And on the flip side of that, Game 4 in Minnesota, tip the cap. I still have some questions about OKC shooters. I do think the zone will be something that they can have thrown at them. And I think that 3-point shooting in this, when there is as much variance possibility for both of these teams, I have skepticism of one and I have belief in another. That's another big swing point for me. I'll pause there before I see you want to hop in.
Do you have confidence that through 4 games of this series, Indiana can hang in the margins? Turnovers, offensive rebounding, 50-50 balls, team rebounds, free throws is a biggie here.
We'll get that's yeah, it's coming up.
You can head into those areas, but that to me is where you have to start here. Is you have to be able to, if you tell me they are not going to get killed on the margins, it will be within the range of variance. I like Indiana's chances based off of the quality of shots and shooters they have and how they're shooting in these playoffs versus the quality of shots that OKC allows and generates. That you can get me there if you can make the argument that Indy will not get annihilated in the margin.
I very much believe that. List them out again, because at 50-50 balls, I don't think I've seen too many teams better at that type of thing. It's to me, this is like the try-hard finals. That's why I'm so excited for it. These teams are like the ultimate hustle teams. They have everyone on their team going full balls out the whole time. It's incredible to watch. I'm so excited for it. And again, I do think that a lot of these margins are tight. Rebounding, I think neither team is a great rebounding team. I don't really have an edge either direction there. And what was the other one you had to start?
It's turnovers.
And so turnovers are very interesting. And I do have some worries about that, because I do think that, in fact, I don't even have the worries about the turnovers. I have the worry about the fear of the turnover, and that like Halliburton just doesn't get the ball and he's low usage because of the fear of a turnover, and that takes him out of the game, and that's their best player, and he's not even everyone is pointing out by this point, the lowest usage game of the season was against OKC. It's almost the fear of the turnover that's actually doing more damage than the turnover itself.
Yeah. A pretty good script for OKC, even though they don't want to blitz. That's never what they want to do. Is just, look, we're going to pick him up at 50, like the Knicks did. Then we're going to send a double. We're going to force the ball out of his hands, and then we're going to ball denial. And we're just not going to let it get back to him.
I have not. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That when Ant got taken out of the series, was it a lot of denial, or was it? In my mind, they don't do a lot of the It's a lot of scrambling. In my mind, is what OKC does. I think Indiana is actually a really good team to take advantage of the scramble, at least to get everyone involved.
Yes, but the question is just, can you win if it's everybody but Halliburton is involved?
So then the turnovers are back on the table.
Yeah. Exactly.
Totally fair.
Now it's Nembhard trying to make plays.
Yeah, that is totally fair. And again, if it was a pick 'em, I wouldn't be on Indiana. I do think that is that is a thing I'm very worried about. The last one I will say in this swing factor, I think this is really interesting. From a player side, I think it is the biggest single X factor of the playoff of the finals here. Aaron Nesmith on twofold: the health and the foul trouble. The foul trouble definitely being as important as the health. He's foul prone. He's got a tweaked ankle, but he needs to be the main Shea matchup. So in the game they played 2 games, and one of the games Nesmith was out. Nesmith, in the game he was in, did a pretty good job on him. Now Shea still got 33. He got 45 in the game Nesmith was out. 33, but it was on 10 of 23 shooting. Had to work a lot harder for it. You sent me this excellent site, Data Baller. Shout out to them. So these are the individual matchups: Shea versus Nembhard and Shea versus Nesmith in his career. Shea versus Nembhard, 34.5 points per 100, 67% true shooting, 7.5 free throws per 75, 3 assists to 1 turnover per 75. So he's just looking to attack, and he's doing it well. Against Nesmith, less than half the points per 100, 17 points per 100 possessions, 33% true shooting. The free throws stay about the same, which I do think is notable. The assists go way up, and the turnovers go way up. Nesmith is a much better matchup for Shea. Now, the worry here is the health and the foul trouble. But if I am Rick Carlisle, I'm aware of this. I am putting Nesmith on him. Certainly when it matters the most, close end of games, that is the matchup. Now, it's tough because he's also probably the best matchup for J-Dub, but I want the ball in J-Dub's hands, and if he beats me, I tip the cap. I do not want it to be Shea. That game that OKC won, that Nesmith did play, they kind of did that to a degree. They said, everyone else beat us. Isaiah Joe and Lou Dort, you want to guess what they shot combined for 3?
I know this, but tell me.
11 for 14.
Yeah.
Those guys shoot 11 for 14. Yeah, the Thunder are winning this game. I'm not guessing those guys are shooting 11-14, even at a home game 1 in the finals, which is like the best spot for it. I think you make everyone else beat you. Shea's going to get his 30. That's fine. Make it a very tough 30. Make everyone else beat you and grind it to dust. I really think that there is a path there. Again, this Denver team took them to 7 with a way worse roster and I think a worse coach. And again, it's a different basketball team. Indy doesn't have Jokic. They don't have, and again, like you said, I have no idea how they won that one game. That's totally fair. But if this gets to 6, I'll give you a bet in a second. That's plus money, over 5.5 games, plus 120 right now. This does not have to get far in this series to be on the Indiana side of it and make money. So should I get with that all out of the way? Should I get to how to bet it, or do you want to respond to any of the Nesmith stuff?
No, tell me the bets.
So the game 1 mega trend is terrifying. I mean, I will be honest. They have a 24.7% home rating on top of what is like one of the strongest trends in sports. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can just sit out. You can wait a game, let OKC run rampant, and don't get scared. It's going to be very difficult. I can tell you right now, Friday morning, I'm going to play this tape back to myself because I'm going to be terrified and say, oh man, they turned it over 20 times. What am I doing thinking about betting the Pacers? I think you can wait through game 1. I do this sometimes. I outsmart myself. So I will give bets where if you don't want to outsmart yourself, let's just do it this way. If you don't want to outsmart yourself, the Pacers to win the series, that is the most obvious way to be on it. That is implied 15.87% odds. I am fine betting that. If you want to split it, you can do Pacers in 6, Pacers in 7, because you and I both agree the Pacers aren't winning in 4 or 5. That gets you to plus 1,400, plus 1,500. That gets you to plus 674. If you play the two of them, that's 12.92% implied. You can do a series total number of games over 5.5. That also takes out a lot of the noise. You can get plus 120 on that. You can go crazy with the exacts. You can go, OKC game 1, Indiana game 2, Indiana game 3, OKC game 4, OKC game 5, Indiana game 6, Indiana game 7. You can do something like that. You can script it out. The inverse to this crazy home rating for the Thunder this postseason, they're minus 6.2 on the road. Now, a lot of that is the Minnesota blowout, for sure. We're talking small samples here. But the home road thing for the shooters, we have seen it. It's true. Lou Dort is a different man at home versus than he is on the road. But I think you do want to be looking at home road stuff here. But Indiana's pretty good on the road. I think that they can steal one, and they obviously are going to have to if they want to get through and actually win this series. But they don't even have to win one at home to get this to a game 7. The series doesn't start till you lose a home game. So if you are able to maintain that home court advantage, you can get through to a game 7. In a game 7, you're either sitting on this gorgeous ticket, this plus 530 you got. You can hedge out or you just let it ride, because in game 7, I will definitely want that Pacers money line at that point. It will have gone late enough in the series that I will know that Indiana can keep it close here. I have one crazy long shot, but I want to know, before I get to the crazy long shot, have I won you over at all? Or are you still Thunder minus 2.5?
Here's what you have me thinking. That with a larger position on minus 2.5 and Thunder in 5, if the Thunder win game 1, right now, Thunder or Pacers to be up 2-1 after 3 is plus 410. If the Thunder win game 1 and if they blow them out, that number skyrockets. And that honestly might be a pretty good play.
I heard you talking about that on the pod. It's another way to approach this. I'll say this. I am here making the case for Indiana. I'm not putting like 8 units spread out over this. This is like, I'm picking my 2 or 3 favorite bets, probably putting like a 1/10 of a unit on plus 1,400, 1/10 of a unit plus 1,500. I'm probably going to put half unit, maybe full unit on the series game to go over 5.5. I'm not going crazy here. This is not like lay the mortgage. I just think that there is a discrepancy in the market from how I see the difference between these two teams. And I don't have a model. I don't do the modeling thing. I think if I look at myself, I think what I do better is that I am able to see when the market is off on a certain team, especially from a futures perspective. Game night in, night out, I find that very difficult. I couldn't be in the weeds like fiddle trying to figure out, market moves like that. But when I'm able to zoom out, I do think that, being able to pick out teams that the market is a little too high on or a little too low on, I think that there is some room for Indiana here. So should I get my crazy 500 to 1 long shot to end the pod here?
Fire it off.
Can you guess it based on the conversation so far? To Finals MVP.
I cannot.
Aaron Nesmith, Finals MVP. He's going to draw the Shea matchup. He's going to be the one who's getting those corner threes that OKC is fine giving up. We just saw the heater he can go on. Now he's coming in with a twisted ankle. His foul trouble is a thing that he has to struggle with at times. But I think the matchups for Siakam and Halliburton are genuinely very tough. It's a part I skipped over a lot in this because I am very nervous. I think that's the toughest case to be made there. I think Nesmith, it's basically the Andre Iguodala award. It's the who's the other? We got another defender who got it. I mean, even Kawhi on LeBron.
That was it.
Kawhi on LeBron. There are paths to players like this getting it. I wanted to have one bet like this. I really like Nesmith. This is one of those numbers that's wrong, but it'll cash 1 out of 75 times instead of 1 out of, I think this is implied like, a 0.5% or something. So a fun long shot to end. The best bet over 5.5 games. I love sprinkling. I don't even say love. I like sprinkling Pacers in 6, Pacers in 7. And really, I think that there is room to approach Indiana throughout this series, either spreads or, like you said, after game 1, that we're really like, if they smoke them game 1, it's going to feel gross, but that's probably where I'll re-enter the market a little bit, do a little double down. If I'm feeling good, like if I see matchup stuff I like, if I see Nesmith on Shea and staying out foul trouble, but like J-Dub and Jort shoot like 15 of 20 combined, that's when I'll be like, all right, I'm really believing.
Okay. All right. I could talk about this for another 5 hours, but Jim's got to record another podcast with Brandon that will literally take 5 hours. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. You can follow Jim Turvey in the Action Network app at Turvey Bets and catch his work at Roto Grinders as well throughout the week. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. More content in this feed. You're going to have like 6,000 podcasts. So just keep a lookout for all those. Appreciate you guys being with us. Till next time, let's get buckets.